are you doing this weekend?
Okay, happy Friday, almost weekend. Yeah. Okay, so usually I like to start with some recap question just to refresh your memory of where we were. So we were just starting, we didn't go that far, and we were talking about why do we analyze food from a consumer perspective. I don't think we started from an industry perspective, but what do you remember we talked about, Emma?
Safety.
Safety. We gave few examples for safety. Do you remember? Some of you talked about allergen. Do you want to say anything?
Physical.
Physical, like glass or metal, contaminants such as melamine, you don't want it to be there, sulfites for people with sensitivity. So safety does not always mean microbial safety. Okay, safety, what else?
Quality.
Marie.
Yes.
Quality, of course, the consumer cares for quality and consistent quality. So when you get used to one kind of food, you don't want it to taste different or look different every time you buy the same type of food. Okay, other than quality, one important aspect that sometimes we care about. Come on.
Sensory.
Yeah, that's really true. It's part of quality. Alejandra. Okay, so one other important thing. Golden, huh?
Golden.
Yes.
Sustainability.
Sustainability? Yeah, we care about sustainability, but we care about, I didn't mention it. So nutrition. Yes, that's the other one. Scarlet that I was looking for, but sustainability is important one. As a Gen Z, we care about environment sustainability, right? So what would you want to analyze? That would be really sustainable. I don't know, I never thought about it, but let's think about it.
Water usage.
Aha. Water usage. So in a food, what would you test to determine water usage? Is there something you would test to determine water usage? But not that I know of, but maybe you can think of something. But other than that, what do you care when you pick up your food from,
How many layers of packaging?
Huh?
How many layers of packaging?
How many layers of packaging? Yes, but okay. This is all great in terms of sustainability, packaging, water usage, energy usage, carbon print, all of that. But was there any specific test you would do from a food analysis perspective?
Not for sustainability, but for nutrition.
Yeah, for nutrition.
For calories.
Calories, yes, calories. So looking at fat content, for example, or total carbohydrate, sugar. Yeah.
For the sustainability
Say
one.
your name.
Lizzie.
Lizzie, yes, I knew you were Lizzie. Okay, Lizzie. I was testing you. No.
For sustainability, like ppm of different insecticides or pesticides.
Ah, wonderful. That's a great example. You got it. Yes. Did they use insecticides or not? If they're not, that's better for the environment. So we measure if there is any residual pesticide. Anyway, we don't want pesticide in our food, but there is a minimum or maximum limit that allow us to use for crops. Okay, very good, you guys. Good, good. Now, if you're in industry and you have a Q&A lab, not Q&A, QA, lab, what would you be wanting to test food for? For what purpose? From a food industry, you can look ahead, but yes, go ahead.
Consistency.
Consistency.
Texture, flavor, taste.
Yeah, say your name first. Allie. I need that too. Consistency, quality.
Like weights, so making sure you don't have too much giveaway, you're not selling more products in your advertising.
Exactly. So you would want to measure, of course, you care for money, right? So you want to sell water. So the more water you have on product in your meat sausage, the better it is, for example, for you from a cost perspective. But you care for quality, you care for the consumer. You want your consumer to come back to you. Go ahead, say anything.
Katie?
Yeah.
Like microbial growth and.
Yeah, safety. You want to get, of course, there is a risk. You want to avoid the risk by selling and then getting recalls or getting a penalty for selling unsafe food. Okay, so consumer, you have your consumer in mind. But something else you really care about is, go ahead, William.
Nutrient composition for like health claims?
Yes, if you want to make a health claim, good source of protein, or for example, low in cholesterol or no cholesterol, no saturated fat, high in calcium. All of these things, you want to make sure you analyze the food and they fit. We're going to talk about nutrition labeling next week, and there will be categories for when you can say good source of, or zero fat, skim milk, or low fat. What's the percentage that you need to be at fat content to call that food low fat? Okay, but then there is another important aspect is government. You have to follow government regulation. Nutrition labeling, for example, it is required to have a nutrition label for most of the food. So we need to follow government regulations. And sometimes a food product has a standard of identity. So you measure different components to make sure that your food meets that standard of identity. So there is the consumer side of things, whether it is the quality aspects, the safety of the consumer. Sometimes also you want to do analysis if you change an ingredient for a purpose of cost. You want to see what the impact is on the quality of the product. You want to reduce cost, but you don't want to change the quality. So there's so many reasons why an industry we need to analyze food. All right, so which brings me to this slide that has everything almost we talked about, from a product quality, product development. So the consumer is always looking for new foods and potentially foods with certain health requirement. So we're always developing new products to meet the consumer demand and what the consumer is looking for. We change processes during in industry, sometimes adding a new equipment, for example. How would that impact the quality? So I'll give you an example later on of each one of those. Sometimes, like I said, you want to change ingredient to reduce cost, to make more profit, sell more water, solve problems. You sometimes in industry, you act like a forensics, you have a mystery that you want to solve. And I'll give you an example of that. Compete, which is always something that you do in industry. There is this company that's producing this product that all the consumers are loving. So you want to compete and produce similar or better products. And then we keep government regulations in mind. Okay, and now we're going to go into telling stories and giving examples for each one of those. All right, product development. You're going to be a food scientist, hopefully one day in the industry. Let's say you work in R&D and you were asked by your management, they're always looking to save money. And they said, hey, we're going to want to replace butter by vegetable fat. Cost less money. And then you as an analyst, you want to test certain things when you make that replacement. What would you be testing when you replace that ingredient? What comes to your mind? Based on your learning, go ahead, Lucan. Say your, Lukman, okay.
Probably test for like how long that like mix with together.
How they can mix together, so consistency. All right, so fat, usually butter even have nice spreadability, gives you smoothness. in the mouthfeel. So you can measure consistency by physical measures, or you can measure consistency how? You have a course on that. I don't know if you've taken it, go ahead.
Sensory.
Sensory, yes, yes, absolutely. Sensory. That's one thing. What else would you think about? Go ahead. You're Katie, right?
Yeah, since the nutrition label would be different, you would have to retest for the macronutrients and
Okay, if you add the amount of fat to be the same as butter, but you still have something on the nutrition label that is related to that. But you imagine the nutrition label, there's total fat. What is underneath?
the types of fat.
Yeah, saturated, polyunsaturated fat.
Along with the nutrition label, there wouldn't be, like if butter's the only milk product in it, you could take that out.
Ah, yes. I don't know if butter qualifies, you have to cut it as an element because it's fat, not protein. Do you know? I don't know. I don't know either. I will look into that, but that's a good call. But another thing, when you have polyunsaturated fat, what characteristics that might affect? If you have saturated fat versus polyunsaturated fat, what qualities of the food might be impacted?
Texture.
Texture, yes, but what were you gonna say? Maybe spoilage. Spoilage, rancidity. So polyunsaturated or unsaturated fat, well, is more prone to oxidation. Okay, and that will affect taste, basically mostly flavor, taste. You don't want that. You don't want the food to get rancid, and shelf life. So you will have lower shelf life if you have food that will potentially get rancid sooner. So many things that you want to think about your nutrition label. So now there's the saturated, polyunsaturated. Now there is the rancidity aspect, the texture, doing sensory studies, so a lot of different things. You changed one ingredient and opened the door for so many different analyses. Okay, very good. Are you getting a little excited about food analysis? Yeah, humor me. Okay, now you're evaluating a new process. This actually a real example. I worked at Cargill for a sabbatic 1 year. And one of the things that came along to my desk is Cargill sells soy flour to a company that uses flour to do fermentation, to grow microbes. So the microbes are dependent on the nutrients in that soy. They changed an equipment, a cooker. You have to cook soy and soy ingredients to inhibit trypsin inhibitor, right? To inactivate trypsin inhibitor. So they have a cooker, so that changed. They put in a new cooker, and they sold the soy flour to that company, and then the company came back and said, well, we had less growth. During the fermentation, we had less microbes growing. So I say, well, okay, now what's the problem with this soy flour? What would you be testing with this story? You know that the microbes are not growing as they should. But please.
Like maybe the amount of the different macronutrients that the microbes eat in this way.
Yes, so, and given I am in protein business, so this first thing is protein. So something happened to the protein, actually, that made it not very available for digestion by the microbes. So I looked at protein denaturation. Did the protein denature? Did the protein polymerize? And true, yes, the protein denatured, polymerized. Then we went back to the processing line and we said, okay, let's look at different parameters of this cooker that you installed, even though that you might need different time temperature combination, but what are the time temperature combination of this new equipment that will give you qualities similar to the old batch? So you would analyze different things and try to adjust your processing parameters accordingly. All right, product complaints. it happens all the time. And usually the CPG companies always blame the ingredient company. It's kind of like the story that always happens. This is also a true story. So there is a cereal-based pellet that a producer sells to a CPG company. They take that pellet, they deep fry it and package it. Then it became rancid in a shorter amount of time than usual. So the complaint came back to those that are producing the cereal pellet, and they said, well, something is different. Your material is not good. It's causing rancidity in the product. So you, as a person that works for the company that produced the pellet, so you wanted to investigate. So you went and got packages from the product that the customer producing. What would you investigate? You got a package. What would you investigate? Do you get anything else other than that package? What causes rancidity? The spoiler can, but what is rancidity really? It's the oxidation or breakdown of the fat. So you have hydrolytic rancidity, you have oxidative rancidity. So there is something related to the fat getting rancid. So what do you do?
You take the finished product too.
Yeah, you take the finished product, you get the package.
Maybe even better packaging too.
Yes, you take the oil, you get a sample from their oil. What if their oil is rancid? What if their oil has been, sometimes when you use the oil a lot, it will break down into fatty acids. So the triglycerides will break down and then it will be more prone to oxidation. So you want a sample of the oil to test if the oil has gotten rancid. That's one. Then the package, what would you be looking at the package? You said something about layers of package, but it's packaging related. But
If there was like a hole in it.
yeah, well, a hole or how permeable is their package to oxygen? So oxygen permeability, did they change their package? Do their packages have holes in them? So what is happening to the package? And then you also test your pallet as well. So you would test your pallet, you test the permeability of the package, you test the oil, and then you come out with a conclusion. Is it your fault? Something happened when you were producing the pallet, or is it after you sent it? Yes, Alejandra. Oh, lipid oxidation, because they are lipid breakdown, because they said rancidity, and there are two types of it. So you would test, do you have higher amount that you should be fatty acids? There's that hydrolytic acidity. If you have oxidative acidity, you look for peroxide or secondary oxidation. Then you would say, oh, okay, so my palate is rancid already to start. Yeah. Okay, good. Good question. And then food forensic, I mean, the complaint is also part of being, doing kind of a forensics type. But this is, again, a real example that happened. You are an ingredient company and a CPG company came back and told you, well, your ingredient has glass in it. There is a sharp object in it. So what's the first thing you want to do to look for that sharp object? How would you try to find your sharp object? It's a physical approach. Go ahead.
Go to where it's like where the container's being filled. And you can go to where the container's being filled and see if there's something loose or something's broken.
Sure.
There's nothing there.
Definitely, you want to do that. But before you do that, do you want to confirm that there is a sharp object first? So, Emma, what would you do? Yes, if there is metal, if there is glass, what would you look for? How would you do? What? What if the glass pieces are very, very tiny, like sugar? So we have glasses, and sometimes we don't even see very well with our glasses on. So what do we use to see better? Microscope. So we put microscope is an else. So there are different types of microscopes available. There is a whole chapter in your book on different types of microscopes. We're not going to cover that. It's physical measurement, but yeah, you put it under the microscope. Let's say scanning electron microscopy. Then you would see what kind of metal that is or element that is. It actually turned out to be crystallized sugar. It was not glass. So, yeah. But if it were glass, then you go and try to investigate the line where you could have sharp objects, where you could have broken something. Yeah. And then competition. This is, life is all about competition. And in industry, there's always cases of competition. Let's say you know that Kellogg's is producing this wonderful morning cereal and you work at General Mills and you want to produce similar cereal. What's the first step? The very first step. Go ahead, Lizzie.
Their ingredients.
Yes, thank you. You just go buy a box of that cereal and look at their list of ingredients. Now, the second step you're going to be doing next week in lab. Go ahead.
Would it be like to identify the drivers of light or something like
Drivers of light, yes, you would want to do sensory evaluation, but yeah, you're not just your Ellie, okay?
Looking at like the nutrition label, like, doing like the nutritional analysis.
Yes, so next week in lab, you're gonna do just that. You're gonna learn something called reverse engineering. So you're going to formulate using a program called Tech Wizard. You're going to formulate nutrition label, but then there's also a place where you put in information from a label and reverse engineer to get the formula. Okay, to kind of get an estimation. So here are the ingredients. Here's the nutrition label, what it says, how much protein, how much fat, whatever. And then you have information on each ingredient and the composition of each ingredient. Then there is a magic button that you would click and then it will reverse engineer. It will give you what percentage of sugar they had, what percentage of whatever the cereal, corn or what have you. So you reverse engineer.
What if you have multiple different sources or something, like if you have multiple different protein sources, is it able to tell you the quantity of each of those or just?
No, you never will be able to get the exact same thing. It will give you an estimation. And sometimes the programs that you work with now, they don't have a complete database. They won't have the composition of all the ingredients that potentially went into that product. You will get a general idea of the formulation, but it won't be 100%. But it's a start. So you would formulate, and definitely you want to do sensory evaluation to see how it's different, or I don't know how many of you have taken the sensory class already, but then there are the duo trio test, for example. Some of you might have heard of that, to look at can you detect the difference when you formulate phase 2. So yeah, a lot of different things, but it starts with a simple, go get the package, try to get a good nutrition labeling program, do a reverse engineering, then do analysis, produce product and analyze. Okay, any questions so far? All right. So government, so we have regulations, government regulations, and from a government perspective, we have the nutrition labeling requirements for most of the food. Next week, we'll talk about that, and we will talk about those that are exempt from nutrition labeling. But because the government requires nutrition labeling, we have to do a set of analysis to be able to generate nutrition label. So that is a government requirement. Another two other government requirements, you hear about them in food quality, the good manufacturing practice, and then the HACCP. And they have set of analyses associated with maintaining a good manufacturing practices and also the hazard analysis critical control point, but it really has to do mostly with safety, hygiene, and all of those related evaluation. And then, have you heard of CFR? It is short for Code of Federal Regulation. So it has a lot of information, especially everything we need to know about nutrition labeling is in the Code of Federal Regulation. All foods that have standard of identity, it is in Code of Federal Regulation. So it is a huge document. Within it, there are multiple documents as well. So they are briefly mentioned in your introduction chapter in the textbook. And then Codex is specific for international trade. So exporting, importing, and what are the requirements for importing goods from different countries? What do we look for when we import? What qualities before we accept the product or the crop or whatever we are importing? And same way, we need to understand the regulations for countries we are exporting to. So all of that information is in Codex. Okay. That's it. I dislike regulations, so I'm not going to spend any time more on that. Except for nutrition labeling. I'm going to talk a lot on the regulation of nutrition labeling. Okay, so when we are producing a product, there is a management of the product quality that starts with your incoming ingredients during processing and also the final product. And I mentioned briefly the project that I used to give in this class, and it really helps the student put everything together and develop kind of an outline of what analysis you should do on the ingredients coming in, depending on what the ingredients are. What are the tests to do during processing to monitor that processing, all unit operations are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then what analysis you're doing on the final product. So oftentimes in industry, it's a very common practice that you have specific suppliers. We call them select suppliers because big companies like General Mills can't go shopping for suppliers every now and then. So they get their oats. Sometimes they grow their own oats. But let's say they get their oats from a specific supplier, they get their sugar from a specific supplier. So they don't have to analyze the ingredients when they bring them. There is a trust relationship that the select supplier will always give them the required qualities of these ingredients. And these ingredients comes with what we call a specification sheet. So it will have, let's say, moisture content, total count of microbes, ash content, protein content, whatever the ingredient is, it comes with its the own sheet of certificate of analysis, we call it. And then sometimes upon receiving the ingredient, some companies do internal testing as well. Let's say if your ingredient is raw milk coming from the farm, the farm is not going to do all the tests that you want to do on this milk. You want to test the fat content because fat is money, protein is money. So you want to test that the milk was not watered down. Sometimes you get putting water in the milk, you're selling water. There's a minimum, not minimum, there is a maximum moisture content that should be in the milk when you receive it. What is the moisture content of the milk? Do you know? Do you learn this anywhere? No, not in any class. They tell you what the moisture content of milk. It's a college board question. Who's going to be in college board? What? Yes. What's the moisture content of milk? Go ahead, give me a guess. Wild guess. Huh?
60.
60%, that's a very wild guess. 100%?
What?
Well, this is wonderful guess. I mean, you're guessing, you get your point. The milk is have other components than water,
Sure.
right? And the moisture content of milk is about 87%. If you receive your milk and you have 90% moisture, it's watered down. It's adulterated.
So like skim milk has a higher moisture.
No, it
No.
doesn't. Everything else, like the protein content, for example, maybe a little bit higher. I mean, think about the fat. Fat content is around 3.5 to 4.5, depending on the cow breed. And then when you skim the milk, the protein content goes up, the ash content goes up, the lactose content goes up, and the water a little bit goes. Yeah, it's kind of like percentage. Yeah, good question, though. You almost done. Okay. Yeah, so that is an example that when you get milk from a farm, one thing you would do is quickly measure moisture content to make sure that the milk is not adulterated. So yeah, so there are internal in-house testing. There are ingredients that you just trust the supplier and get certificate of analysis and move on. And then during processing, you have your control samples where, okay, it should have this much fat, it should have this much acidity, not always macro, it's kind of characteristic, like how acidic it is. Let's say you're producing yogurt. You want to make sure you reach that 4.6 pH because you want to form your the texture of the yogurt. You want that casein protein to kind of lose its charge and form that yogurt texture. So you would be during processing, you look at temperature, you look at pH, total acidity, moisture content, and then you would kind of every unit operation you're doing during the processing of the product, you want to ensure that a certain characteristic of the food as it's being produced is as your control samples. And then in the final product, then you have a list of things you have to analyze. Is it consistent to all of your other products? So you will have quality parameters that you would be checking. Nutrition label, because you have to generate your nutrition labeling. There are compliances for nutrition label, and we'll talk about that next week. So if a company is not within a compliance, the nutrition label does not match when they come and audit it, they will be penalized. So that would be to the legal requirements, standard of identity, all of that. And then whether it's acceptable to the consumers. You don't do sensory evaluation every time you have a production, but once in a while, you make sure that the quality is consistent. And then if you have a health claim, you would do your assessment to ensure that your health claim can be put on the label. Okay. As a food analyst, what do we need to know? So the entire semester, you're gonna pretend or imagine yourself as a food analyst. And then you're gonna learn a lot about different methods of analysis, how to execute the analysis, what do you do with the data, and what do you conclude? It's all about, at the end of the day, you have to have a conclusion. Is this similar to what you expected? Do you meet the government regulation? Do you have to make adjustment to your production? So you have to have a conclusion. In order to have that conclusion, whatever is the objective, you need to understand what is the analysis that you need to do. Depending on the objective, well, it's easy, nutrition label. I know what I want to analyze. Rancidity, okay, I will have different types of analyses I can do. So depending on the objective, then you will identify what analysis I need to do. And once you identify the analyses you want to do, then you choose the method. You will learn that there are sometimes infinite methods for the same thing. So we're going to learn a lot of different things. Let's say fat analysis. We're going to learn how to determine total fat using different methods. There's something we call Montjournier, another is Soxhlet, some other thing for dairy product called Babcock test. So there's so many methods out there. You're going to learn a few, not all of them. And then you're going to say, based on the type of analysis, the purpose of analysis, the type of food, I'm going to choose this method, X method. So all the semester, we're going to learn methods and where to apply them. You've chosen your method, and then you work in an industry where you produce tons of product per day. What are you going to do? You're not going to analyze all of the tons and tons of samples. You have to select what we call a representative sample of the population. So we have a chapter, I think chapter 5 in your textbook. We're going to learn about sample selection and sample preparation. It's a very important component. Might not be the most exciting chapter in the book, I can tell you that, but it's one of the most important component of analysis. If we mess this up, our conclusions will be all wrong. If you don't have a representative sample of the population, you are going to make the wrong conclusion. You might impact tremendously the consumer, probably safety of the consumer, or you might cost the industry or company a lot of money, lose a lot of money. This is a very essential step, although it might not be as exciting to learn about. And then the exciting bit, at least for me, is to actually analyze, go in the lab and do the analysis. So that's where the action is. So we're going to do a lot of labs to learn how to apply different methods, learn analytical tools, and then data analysis and interpretation. We're not going to do a lot of stats in this class, although all of you should have taken the 3000 level stats, but we're going to do simple data analysis. You know, average, we have a chapter 4 in the textbook, you know, how to get the average, what is standard deviation, standard error of the mean, coefficient of variation, confidence interval, just to kind of make sure that your data is reliable, meaningful, you can interpret it and make a decision based on your data that you generated. And then you make your decision. Easy peasy. All right. So, yes.
What's the difference between like the method and my algorithm? And then I was kind of.
They're very related. They are related. First, you choose the method. Let's say I want to use Soxhlet to determine my total fat. You made that choice. Now you go and do it. Now you learn the different steps. Okay. That's the lab. That's the theory. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's a good question. And while we do all of that, we want to always keep government regulations. What method to choose depends on what's the purpose. If it's for nutrition label, we are bound to choose something we call official methods of analysis. And I'll talk about those later. All right. Let's just quickly answer this question. Type of analysis to be carried out is determined based on, from everything we talked about so far. Anybody wants to give it a go? Simple guess. You know, when you don't know, you go for all of them. Yeah, when you don't know, just say all of them. Yes, it's really in order for you to determine what analysis you want to do. First of all, what am I dealing with? Is it milk, like I said, or is it wheat? different types of analyses. For what purpose? Is it for nutrition labeling? Is it the incoming ingredient? And also, am I trying to analyze so that I can put a health claim on my package? Calcium and osteoporosis. Can I put this on my package? Cardiovascular health. Can I put that? That's a health claim. Okay. So there we are going to learn about nutrient claim and health claim. Okay, they're two different things. Nutrient claim is directly related, a good source of, a high amount of. Health claim, it is related to a disease, dental caries, calcium and osteoporosis, fiber and cancers, things like that. Okay. So that you want to make a choice for the method, what method to use. There are many methods in front of you and you want to make a choice. Then you look at the characteristics of the method. So what are some of the inherent properties? When you hear the word specificity, what does it mean to you? You have method A and method B. And if you hear the word specificity, what does it mean? Differences between method A and method B. You can give any example. What does specific mean? Yeah. Literally. It is specific for something, right? So let's say I want to measure total carbohydrate versus glucose specifically. Okay. So I can measure total carbohydrate using an assay that will take into account all of the soluble sugars. That's not specific for glucose, but then I can use an enzymatic assay to measure specifically glucose. So it depends, am I looking at total soluble sugars, total reducing sugar? Well, sucrose, for example, is not a reducing sugar. So there is a specific assay for total reducing sugar. It's not specific for sucrose. So what am I looking for? Then I would look at the method and try to understand if this method is specific for what I'm looking for. That's one. Now, we're going to learn precision and accuracy later on, but what's the difference between being precise and being accurate? Or is there a difference? Emma, there is a difference. What is it? But you don't know. That's good, but you know there is a difference. That's good. Some people use that they alternate. It's not right. Anybody else? Yeah.
I think about the the bullet.
Yeah.
Where it's like precision is always getting in the same spot. But
Yeah.
accuracy is
Where do you want
like
it?
where you want it. Yeah.
Where do you want it? If you have all these circles and then you have a dot in the middle. If you want to be accurate, when you throw a dart, where do you want that dart to go? In the middle. So the middle is closest to the true value. So accurate is how close to the true value your value is. So that's accurate. Precise, how precise are you when you're doing the experiment? You might be way not accurate, but you're always getting the same result. So you do multiple replications and they're all close to each other, you're very precise. Okay, well, we have a whole lecture on accuracy and precision. Okay. And then applicability of the method. Okay, what's the sample size? Does the method require 100 grams and I only have 100 milligrams? So the method, it's very important to know the sample size. It's very important to know, do I have the reagents in my lab? Do I need to purchase the reagents? How expensive these reagents are? Do I have the right equipment in the lab? Sometimes for one particular analysis, if you do LICO, well, nitrogen analyzer, DUMAS method, or you do CalDAR, you can get the same results, but what's available in your lab? how long it's gonna take. For example, when you pasteurize milk, how do you test if the milk is pasteurized? You know? How do you test if the milk is pasteurized? What is pasteurization? What are you targeting when you pasteurize your milk? Go ahead, what are those? Microbes? What kind of microbes? Pathogens or spoilage? We can't. When you pasteurize, what are you targeting? When you sterilize, what are you targeting? When a pasteurize is targeting pathogens. When you're sterilizing, all microbes. Okay, so you pasteurize your milk. How do you determine if it's pasteurized? Usually,
Test it.
you test it. How do you test it? What do? You do total count, let's say, or you measure pathogens. Total count is for spoilage and okay, you want to test the pathogen. Sometimes this microbiology test takes how many days? Your regular micro testing takes 2 days. So, but this is not good because you don't have usually that amount of time when you are always producing and you want to determine that you are passing the pasteurization. So there is a test called alkaline phosphatase test. So you test an enzyme activity, which is more thermally stable than any pathogen. If it's inactivated, then you don't. So you go with, probably it's an indirect way, but you save time. And then also reliability, the method, is it reproducible? Every time I run it, do I get the same results? Are my results where I want them to be accurate? So how reliable is the method? Okay. And then a very important component is, do you have the right people that can do the analysis? Are they trained? Do they know the safety? Some tests we are going to learn in the lab that have associated safety issues. We use toxic reagents or explosive reagents. Do we have the right personnel? Do we have the right safety training? Okay. Yeah, I don't want to start this and not be able to finish it. So I will stop here. Have a great weekend, you guys. I'll see you on Monday. Before you leave, I think Gray, you opened everything they need for the lab, right? The assignment, did you put a due date for it?
Yeah,
When is it due?
September 10th.
Okay, so the pre-lab quiz. Don't leave yourself to the last minute. If you have any questions, please let us know. All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
So your response.
I'm some